Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's September 9th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and um, kind of a quiet day. Not a lot of trades today. Um, it just wasn't a very good trading day. There's it really looked like it was going to be a range day early on. Notice how we're going sideways here, but then once we finally dropped and went on through. There's a couple of ways to do this. First, I'd look for a measured move similar to this. But because we were in a range, I would measure that range. You can see there from top to bottom. This is the top of the range. This is the bottom, and there's the mid. And you can tell that's the midpoint. We're working off that. And just move that down an equal distance. And you can see we got an exact, perfect measured move there. Doesn't get any easier than that. I would have also measured this leg as well. And just in case we get a measured leg like that, and you can see that came up way short, but really what we were doing once we dropped down, we just were looking for an equal distance down from what we did earlier in the range. So I would have given you a perfect place to look for our bounce. We didn't really get a setup to go long down there, unfortunately. You might have went long right here. The only problem was you still had this trend line working lower, and that's right into it. You are a long way away from the EMA, and we just did have an equal distance move. So, you might argue for that to be green. And plus, we had an overshoot too. You can see where, let me get this out of the way. And you can see how tight that range is, or trend channel is. Then we got that big overshoot. So that may be enough reason to take that one right there. I'd like to see that failed second entry short, but it doesn't come till here, and then you got to go long right into the EMA, and that's never a very good idea. So um, anyway, I'll mark that one green. If you really want to be aggressive, that's the ones you want to take, because you may catch the low of the day. And guess what? You pretty much did. Prices didn't really take off again, but that was the low of the day down here. So, um, and if it's a range, you may go all the way back to the very highs again. Unfortunately, we never really got outside the bottom of the original range of the two-tier. I mean, you can see there's your two tiers right here, and we never only got back to the bottom of that. So there's just not a lot of trades here, not a lot of good setups. I'm gonna back out just a hair so we can see it a little better. We'll go through them. It won't take long because there's not many today. But that's the way I played it, as a range. And again, when you started lower there, if you broke through this overnight support, which is your lows of the range, then you want to measure it the way I showed you. Either your second leg down, and the other option would be to measure the distance of the range, and that works out to be a perfect measured move, basically. So uh, anyway, 7 o'clock came right up through this move up. Notice that we had a little trend channel. We got a break, and we had two legs up. Then we made a lower high. Basically, you got a double top. That's still a lower high. You're still a little bit away from the EMA. Big bearish, perfect bar. I like going short there. And if you catch that trade, um, you probably wouldn't have been able to ride this one out, depending on what your entry was. You probably would have got stopped out on your runner, and that's a shame because you don't get another chance to enter. Uh, there is a little pullback right here to the trend line, but you're away from the EMA and you're going short right into these lows. Just not a good place. We do get a second entry short here, but the signal bar is very neutral, and then you get another one right beside it with matching lows. I'm not taking that on my chart. If your signal bar was better and you didn't have that those couple of dojis in there and matching lows, then you may go short right there. I didn't think it was worth risking. I thought I'd wait on the lower high, and then of course I don't get a good setup then either. You got that support, you got a bullish bar. It drops on down, but I wasn't going to risk it. There is a failed second entry long right here, but then you're going short really right into these lows here. Again, it probably would have worked, but it's just not a very good setup. So just wait, see what happens. Then we run up here. There's actually a second entry long right here. That's another one that you could argue to be green. We did get a reversal here, and then one more little push down and a second entry long, and But it was really hard to know if this trend line was correct. You didn't have a lot of information yet. This was just more sideways stuff. But there is, you could argue there's a double test. You made that low, you test it once, twice. So there's, I'll mark that one green. This one was very tempting. You could argue that being a double test as well, and that's a big bar. But it actually broke higher first and then turned down, and you didn't have room to get out. And you don't want to go long right into that resistance, that midline. And notice it just kind of chops sideways before it does finally push up. But there's just no good setup there. You could have looked at that as a failed second entry short and maybe use that, hoping that that would push you on through the resistance. But I don't think it's worth it testing, trying it, because you could turn right back down again. You don't want to get hung up in this or chopped up in this. Just stay out of those sideways, very low volume kind of deals there. And you can see we moved a little higher and just did the same thing. But finally, you make a high and then you get a lower high. And this is kind of a repeat of here, and you'll see that repeat a couple of times today. And it gives you a chance to go short with enough room to get out before you get back down to these lows. And we may go test way down here again, and lo and behold, it actually runs down and makes a measured move down. So this turns out to be a pretty good trade. I don't know if you would have ridden this out or not, but it would have been worthwhile. And you actually get a failed second entry long right here after two measured legs down and a real small bearish bar. Just go short right there. And you don't know that it's going to break through there like that, but there's enough room to get out before these lows. This thing just takes on off. There's actually a little breakout pullback short right there, but it actually broke higher and turned, and you know it's a trout most likely, so you could probably get a scalp out of it, but it's real dangerous going short right into that low of the day. So I made it green. And again, you don't know that it's going to take off like that, but that little trap you would assume. Notice that new high, and you run down first entry, then you run another leg down second entry, and when it breaks higher, it instantly turns and goes lower. You know you're probably going to trap some people trying to pick a low on a failed break lower. And that's the reason I like to wait on a higher low, to make sure to get a little more evidence that prices are actually going to bounce. And this thing just takes off. Again, you don't want to be entering way down here, way away from the EMA. And then we talked about this one already. You get an overshoot, you get a higher low. It actually breaks lower and then turns and comes up, and it makes that 3-bar matching high. So that makes it a little iffy too going long there. But if it does break above that 3-bar matching high, it's probably going to push on up to the EMA. So I kind of like that trade, but it is aggressive. Again, there's a failed second entry short there, but you're going long right into the EMA. I don't like that. And of course, you got a little short-term trend line, you get a break, you make a move to a new high. You try to go higher once, you try to go higher twice, and that's that repeat pattern. There it is again. Saw it right here too. That's been a high point each time. Take that one. That's another nice trade, and you get a runner out of that one. You come down here and you go first entry, and then you try to go higher again. And it's not a perfect second entry, but that is a second entry short. And look how bearish that bar is. And it's a lower high than that. You made a lower low and now a lower high. If we should expect the market to try to at least make another measured leg down. So I like going short there. You actually get a lower high here, but there's just too much support across there, and you can see what happens. It bounces, and you get a little double test. You made the low, you test it once, you test it twice. You actually could say you tested it once and then twice more right here, and that is a second entry long with a nice bullish bar. I like going long there. You would hope that this would take on off, but notice what happens. It comes back and tests it again, and there's actually a higher swing here than this one, so that's a new high. So first entry, and so this is a second entry long right here, and that's a nice bearish bar. It is after 2, but it's just right there in that window of 203 or 204 or something like that. So it's still early enough that if you wanted to take a trade here, even if this is a range and you had some resistance up here, you got enough room here. But this thing, you could have just ridden that right on up into the previous range again, or to test the previous breakout. And notice that we tested that once, but usually the market's going to want to test something twice before it gives up on it. So it's not surprising that it comes back and tests it again here. and it tested it again, but it still didn't break lower. It actually did for today, but once the markets opened up the next day, it started higher again. So not a lot of trades today. You might have had a little better setup in here for something else. If you did, that's okay. And but really, there's a downtrend here. I mean, even the trend channel, the downtrend the bias was down early, and this was really weak correction. And when we turn down here at the midline again, you would assume that you're still in this downtrend. And if it breaks lower, you start looking for those measured moves, like I showed you, either a measured leg, or you measure the range and look for an equal distance. And that's I mean, we got that to the tick. So it doesn't get any better than that as far as knowing where to pick a bottom. And that gives you a little more to work with right here too, because you would expect with a sell-off second leg down that steep that we need a little correction, at least back to the EMA. So, but it's always it's always considered an aggressive move because that's a strong trend down. So anyway, that's what I saw today. Not much else we can say about today. Kind of a quiet day. There was some good movement here, just not a lot of the entries. Once you got in, there were some pretty good moves to the downside, but just nothing real exciting today. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 blue or red trades, and maybe a couple of. So that's still, that's still 7 or 8, 9 trade possibilities there. So that's still plenty, but you got to be patient, and that's where most people struggle. When you don't have a lot of trades, especially early in the morning, when by 11 o'clock you've only had maybe 3 trades, it's hard to sit there through that stuff. It's just as hard for me too, so I understand, but that's where you got to be patient. That's where you got to just sit on your hands and do nothing, and sometimes the best trade is no trade. I mean, I'd rather pack up the day and have no losers and not take a trade than to try to force a trade and have a couple of losers and go home with my account to the negative. So always keep that in mind. Sometimes the best trade is no trade, and people seem to think that they're just constantly looking for an entry. If you find yourself constantly wanting to enter on every swing, then you're over trading, you're overzealous, you've got the wrong attitude about what you really need to do here. So keep that in mind. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.